In this gripping story, follow Kemi, a young girl who strikes a dangerous deal with a mysterious snake to save her ailing father. As she grapples with guilt and fear, Kemi must face the consequences of her choices and the secrets that threaten to tear her family apart. Once upon a time in a village called Idanre, a place where the hills stretched tall against the sky and the streams were clear and cool, there lived Kemi, a young pretty girl in her late teens. Kemi's father was a vegetable farmer. Her mother sold these vegetables at the market, and her younger brother, Rotimi, spent his days chasing after goats in the fields. Life was hard, but they managed until one day when things took a bad turn as her father fell ill. At first it was just a fever, but it got worse. His breathing became heavy and his skin burned like fire. They had no money for medicine, and the herbs her mother used did nothing to heal him. Kemi watched as her father's strength faded away, and every day her heart grew heavier. One evening, after fetching water from the stream, Kemi sat by the water's edge. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. She placed the heavy water pot beside her and began to cry. Her tears fell into the stream, mixing with the flowing water. She sang a sad song, one her mother used to sing when times were hard. Her voice was soft, but the pain in it was clear. She cried and sang until it got quite dark, and the stars appeared in the sky, and eventually exhaustion took over. She fell asleep under the tree by the stream. When it got completely dark, something cold and smooth brushed against her skin. Startled, Kemi woke up. A snake was slithering over her body, its scales glistening in the moonlight. She screamed and jumped up, running a few steps away, her heart pounding in her chest. But then she realized she had left her water pot by the stream. It was late, and her family needed the water, so she forced herself to go back. As she reached for the pot, a soft voice stopped her. "Don't be afraid," the voice said. Kemi froze and looked around. She saw no one. "Down here," the voice said again. Her eyes dropped to the snake. It was looking at her, and she realized with a shock that it was the snake speaking. You can talk?" Kemi asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," the snake replied. "My name is Ire. I heard you crying and I wanted to help." Kemi was too shocked to move. She had never heard of a snake that could talk. "Help? How can a snake help me?" she asked, still crouching by the water. "I heard your song and I felt your sadness," Ire said, its voice calm and soft. "I have been lonely for a long time. I only ask for your company. If you sing for me each time you come to fetch water, I will give you something in return." Kemi stared at the snake, unsure of what to say. "What could you give me?" she finally asked. Ire slithered closer and set a small calabash beside her. "Every time you sing for me, you will find this calabash filled with money when you return home." Kemi felt her chest tighten. Money. They needed money for her father's medicine. But could she really trust a snake? She stood up quickly, shaking her head. "I don't want your money," she said, her voice trembling. She picked up her pot and hurried home. That night, when Kemi reached her house, she found her father's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow, and he could barely open his eyes. Her mother sat by his side, looking more tired than ever. Kemi knew then that they needed money urgently, or they would lose him. The next day, with her heart heavy, Kemi returned to the stream. After fetching water, she sat under the tree again. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing the same sad song. Her voice floated over the water, and soon enough, she heard the rustling of leaves. Ire slithered out from the shadows. "You came back," the snake said, almost sounding pleased. "I need the money," Kemi said quietly, her eyes fixed on the ground. "For my father's medicine." Ire nodded its head slowly. "Then take the calabash," it said. "It will be full by the time you return home." Kemi picked up the calabash and went home, her heart pounding. When she opened it, she almost screamed. The small calabash was full of cash, enough to pay for her father's medicine and more. Her hands shook as she showed her mother, explaining that she had found a job working for the queen as a maid. Her mother believed her, and with the money, they bought the medicine her father needed. His health slowly improved, and for the first time in weeks, there was hope in their home. But the visits to the stream continued. Every day after fetching water, Kemi would sit under the tree and sing for Ire. And every evening, when she returned home, the calabash would be filled with money. Her family stopped asking questions, but they wondered how she had found such a good job. One day, however, her father's health took a sudden turn for the worse. He grew sicker than ever, and the medicine they had was no longer enough. They needed more, and they needed it fast. The next evening, Kemi went to the stream, her heart heavy with worry. After she sang, Ire emerged as usual, its eyes watching her closely. Kemi swallowed hard and said, "I need more money. My father's health is getting worse." Ire was silent for a moment. Then it spoke. "I can give you more, but for that, you must do something for me." Kemi frowned. "What do you want?" The snake moved closer, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "You must let me sleep with you," it said, its voice soft but firm. Kemi's heart stopped. She had never expected this. She had thought they were friends. How could it ask this of her? She was a virgin, and the idea of lying with a snake terrified her. She shook her head, unable to speak at first. "I can't," she whispered. But then she thought of her father lying sick at home, struggling to breathe. She had no other choice. Her father needed the money, and without it, he would die. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "I'll do it." Ire slithered back into the shadows, and when it returned, it gave Kemi a larger calabash. "Tomorrow night," it said, "come back and we will seal our agreement." The next night, Kemi prepared herself. She went to the stream, her legs trembling. She sat under the tree, waiting for the darkness to fall. When night came, Ire appeared, its body long and sleek. Slowly, it crept between her legs, and Kemi clenched her fists, biting her lip to keep from crying out. It was painful, and tears ran down her cheeks as the snake coiled around her. When it was over, Kemi gathered her clothes and ran home, crying all the way. The large calabash was waiting for her, full of money, but this time the price felt much too high. Kemi cried all the way home that night. She felt ashamed and dirty. She had done something she never imagined she would do. And for what? Money. Her father's life. But the guilt weighed on her, and the tears wouldn't stop. When she got home, her mother was sitting outside, peeling yams for dinner. "Kemi, are you all right?" her mother asked, her face lined with worry. "I'm fine, Mama," Kemi said, forcing a smile. She didn't want to worry her mother more than she already was. "I just had a long day." She slipped into her room and lay on her mat, curling into herself. That night, she didn't sleep. She kept thinking about what had happened at the stream, about Ire, the snake, and how she had let it take advantage of her. Her father's health was improving, but at what cost? She felt trapped, like she had sold her soul for a handful of coins. Days turned into weeks, and her father got better. He could walk again, and his strength was returning. Kemi's family was happy, but she wasn't. Every night she went to the stream, sang for Ire, and lay with it. Each time, it got harder to hide her pain. The money kept coming, but she didn't care anymore. She just wanted it to stop. One evening, after another painful night with the snake, Kemi told Ire, "I don't need your money anymore. My father is well. We have to stop." Ire's cold eyes watched her. "If we stop, your father will become sick again," the snake said simply. Kemi's heart sank. "But he's healthy now," she protested. "He doesn't need anything more." "If you stop coming to me, he will fall ill again. Ire repeated, its voice calm but final. Kemi felt like the ground had been ripped from under her feet. She had no choice. If she stopped, her father would suffer. She cried for hours by the stream that night, wondering what she had gotten herself into. She had thought the deal would save her family, but now it seemed like a curse. The weeks passed, and Kemi continued going to the stream every night. She sang for Ire, and the snake slithered between her legs, cold and heavy. Each time it hurt, but she kept going because of her father. But one night, everything changed. Her little brother, Rotimi, had noticed her sadness. He was small but clever, and he had always looked up to his big sister. That evening, he heard her crying in her room. He knocked on her door. "Sister, what's wrong?" Rotimi asked, his small voice full of concern. "Nothing, Rotimi," Kemi said quickly, wiping her tears. "Go to bed." But Rotimi wasn't convinced. He could see the sadness in Kemi's eyes, and he knew something was wrong. So, the next evening, he decided to follow her. He didn't tell anyone, not even their mother. He just watched as Kemi left the house with her water pot, and then he quietly followed her through the trees, staying out of sight. Kemi didn't notice him. She walked to the stream as usual, set down her pot, and sat under the tree. Rotimi crouched behind a large rock, peeking out just enough to see what his sister was doing. Kemi started to sing, her voice soft and sad. It was the same song she always sang when she was upset, the same one their mother used to sing. Rotimi watched her closely, but nothing seemed unusual. Maybe she was just sad. Maybe that was all. But then, as the sun began to set and the sky turned dark, Rotimi heard Kemi speaking. "Please," Kemi said, her voice low, "take it easy tonight. I'm tired." Rotimi frowned. Who was she talking to? He peeked around the rock, his eyes wide with curiosity. That's when he saw it. A long, dark, green snake was slithering out of the bushes, moving towards Kemi. Rotimi's heart pounded in his chest as he watched, frozen in place. Kemi didn't look scared. She sat there, her legs slightly open and the snake crawled between them, its body winding around her. Rotimi couldn't believe what he was seeing. His sister was letting a snake crawl between her legs. He couldn't keep quiet any longer. He screamed, a loud, piercing scream that echoed through the trees. Kemi jumped up, startled. The snake hissed and quickly slithered into the bushes, disappearing into the shadows. Kemi's heart raced as she looked around, her eyes landing on Rotimi, who was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Rotimi!" Kemi shouted, her voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" Rotimi's face was pale. What were you doing?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. He was trembling, his eyes still wide with fear. Kemi felt like she was going to faint. She didn't know what to say. How could she explain this? How could she tell her little brother that she had been lying with a snake for money? "Rotimi, listen to me," she said, stepping towards him, her hands shaking. "I can explain." But Rotimi didn't wait to hear the rest. He turned and ran, his small feet kicking up dust as he raced back home. Kemi stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face. She had kept this secret for so long, but now it was out. What do you think of this amazing story? What will later happen to Kemi? What will now become of her relationship with the snake? Will her brother Rotimi tell on her, or will he protect her sister's secret? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as you wait for part 2.